For 37 years, Dr. Billy Higginbotham studied what many considered the most hideous animal in Texas. As the leader of the research team, he and his colleagues directly measured the areas of land that had been devastated, counted population densities using sensor cameras, and documented the damage these animals caused. But the more data they collected, the more alarming the problem became. In 2005, data from 48 landowners controlling more than 230,000 acres raised a red flag. Together, they lost more than $2.22 million as crops, pastures, and property were destroyed. Some families were even pushed close to bankruptcy, and that was only a fraction of the damage across the entire state of Texas. The following year, people poured money into reinforcing fences and aggressively increasing protection around these properties, yet they still suffered another $1.26 million in losses. In the years that followed, the same cycle continued. The more money they spent on defense and repairs, the more severe the overall damage became. What could make people spend so much money just to protect this land? And more importantly, how extreme did their methods have to become to stop these animals? These are not the gentle pink pigs you see on farms. Texas feral hogs are more like 600-pound monsters, armed with razor-sharp tusks and covered by a thick layer of fat that acts like armor, charging straight at you at speeds of up to 45 miles per hour. They are not native animals, but aggressive hybrids descended from escaped domestic pigs and Eurasian wild boars. Texas offers them an almost endless supply of food from farms, dense brush for shelter, and countless water sources. As a result, their population has exploded to around 3.8 million, the largest in the United States, and they cause about $670 million in crop damage every year. Since 2019, Texas has loosened its laws, allowing people to hunt and trap feral hogs more freely. But these old methods have proven largely ineffective. Shoot just one hog, and the rest of the sounder can quickly become more cautious and disappear. That is why a series of newer strategies has emerged, more precise, more advanced, and more scientifically driven. The methods on this list are arranged from the simplest to the most effective. If they are deployed together on a large enough scale, Texas may actually be able to bring these monsters under control. The first method is to outsmart the entire sounder with a remotely triggered smart trap. In a field torn apart by feral hogs, the farmer sets up a large circular steel enclosure, places bait inside, and mounts a thermal sensor camera above it that streams live footage to a phone 24/7. Once every target is inside, the operator simply taps a button to drop a 150-pound steel gate. Boom! More than 30 hogs, weighing well over a ton combined, can be locked inside in a single capture. However, this smart system is not as simple as it sounds. You cannot just set the trap and go to sleep. You have to manipulate the behavior of an entire sounder of these monsters. And the simplest way to influence such large animals is through food. Farmers have to watch their irrigation pipes get crushed while gritting their teeth and spending their own money on 200 pounds of strongly scented corn every day, essentially throwing a feast for the enemy. The gate has to remain wide open for several nights, so the hogs lose their fear and begin moving in and out freely. The key to this strategy is patience. Younger hogs usually rush in first, while older, more cautious animals stay outside and watch. At Philly's Peach Farm, even after 12 hogs were captured in a single drop, cameras still detected individuals that had remained outside the trap. Close the gate too early, and the survivors may sense the danger, become even more cautious, and disappear for good. Only when the very last hog steps inside does the operator make the decisive move. But honestly, not everywhere relies on high-tech solutions like Texas. In Brazil, where invasive wild boars repeatedly destroy cornfields, soybean crops, and pastures, some farmers have created a much simpler trap that can still capture animals on a large scale, digging trenches around their fields. Excavators are brought directly to the edges of farmland. According to Brazilian media reports, these trenches can be around 3 to 5 feet deep, more than 3 feet wide, and stretch along the areas that need protection. In effect, farmers are cutting off the hog's route before they can enter the fields. These trenches work 24 hours a day without electricity, cameras, or anyone standing by to operate a trap. Their effectiveness comes from the depth and steepness of the trench walls. When the hogs encounter the obstacle, many are forced to turn back or change direction. Those that slip into the trench can have great difficulty climbing back out. In some cases, reported by Brazilian media, entire sounders of around 30 to 40 hogs have fallen into the trenches and been contained. But when a ranch stretches across thousands of acres, sitting around and waiting for hogs to walk into a steel trap almost feels like a joke. The brush is too thick, the terrain is too rough, and the hogs move too fast. That is when the battle on the ground gives way to the cavalry in the sky. Forget everything you know about traditional hunting. We are talking about pilots pushing light helicopters to the limit, banking barely 10 feet above the ground, dodging power lines, and kicking up clouds of dust. At the same time, the shooter leans out of the open door, fighting the violent rotor wash while trying to keep the sights locked on a sounder of hogs scattering in every direction. The ultimate advantage of the air campaign is speed and a clear view of the entire landscape. No matter how cunning these animals are, hiding from eyes in the sky is much harder. In federal aerial control operations in Texas alone, tens of thousands of feral hogs have been removed in an average year, wiping out large sounders before critical planting seasons. Do you think you would be brave enough to hang above the ground and take part in this terrifying but necessary operation to protect the livelihoods of thousands of families? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Under favorable conditions, an aerial team can survey roughly 2,000 to 5,000 acres in a single day. But once the hogs disappear into forests so dense that helicopters can no longer follow, air support officially comes to an end. So who is crazy enough to step into the mud and chase an angry, armor-covered animal on its own territory? That is where the ground teams enter the darkness to take on the dirty and dangerous work. This is the most dangerous part of the operation. Hunters have to move on foot through mud and dense brush, following signs left by hogs hiding nearby. Their thick protective hide covers powerful muscle and an animal capable of turning aggressive when cornered. From behind a tree, the hunter holds his breath and takes aim. If the first shot fails to stop the animal, it can immediately charge back with its sharp tusks and seriously injure the hunter. That is why these hunters rely so heavily on radio communication and highly trained tracking dogs. In the pitch-black swamps of Texas, you are not hunting with your eyes. You are running almost blindly through a wall of thorns, guided only by the frantic howling of the dogs. The moment that howling turns into a fierce, deafening roar, you know they have finally cornered one of these monsters. Usually the dogs have two different jobs. Tracking dogs use their sense of smell to follow the hog's trail and flush it out of hiding. Once an animal has been stopped or held in one place, catch dogs move in to keep it there until the hunters arrive. This is also the most dangerous part. A feral hog's tusks can cause serious injuries to a dog's neck, chest, and abdomen. That is why dogs that make direct contact are usually fitted with heavy protective vests, sometimes made with materials such as Kevlar. Texas A&M also recommends that hunting teams carry first aid supplies because an injured dog in a remote area may be hours away from veterinary care. Even with AI-controlled steel traps, helicopter operations, and packs of dogs wearing Kevlar armor, the United States still spends millions of dollars every year trying to control feral hogs. But ask yourself one question. If so much has already been invested, why is this war still not over? The truth is that intense hunting pressure is gradually removing the animals that are easiest to detect, while the survivors tend to be the most cautious ones. They avoid traps, feed only at night, hide deeper in thick cover, and react more quickly to the presence of humans. Each new generation is not producing super hogs through mutation, but it is creating a population that is becoming increasingly difficult to control. That is why more and more experts acknowledge that completely eliminating feral hogs is no longer a realistic goal in many areas. The battle has shifted from eradication to control, and that means millions of dollars will continue to be spent every year simply to keep their numbers at a manageable level. But then another question emerges. If thousands or even tens of thousands of animals must be killed every year just to protect crops and livestock, what is the ethical cost of this fight? If you live in a city, seeing an entire sounder trapped and then killed at once may feel cruel. That is a very natural reaction. But on the other side of the issue, farmers are watching cornfields get torn apart overnight, pastures destroyed, fences ripped open, and livestock put at risk of disease. For them, this is not a story about hating animals. It is a fight to protect their families' livelihoods. So the violence we see out in the fields is not simply an act of cruelty. It is part of the price modern society is paying to limit economic losses and protect the food supply. But Texas soon recognized another problem. Not every rancher could afford smart traps, cameras, or helicopter services like the landowners we talked about earlier. So the fight was expanded into a large-scale coordinated USDA program. Instead of forcing every farmer to fight the problem alone, the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board, together with 15 local conservation districts, created a shared pool of smart traps. These districts purchased large corral traps equipped with motion detection cameras and remotely activated gates, then rotated them from one ranch to another. When a landowner reported hogs repeatedly damaging crops, program specialists would visit the property to examine tracks, travel routes, and potential baiting locations. A large corral trap would then be delivered and equipped with a motion detection camera, remote-controlled gate, and monitoring system. The landowner could also receive up to 100 pounds of corn to begin baiting the sounder. Once the area had been treated or the hogs had moved elsewhere, the entire system was dismantled and transferred to another property. The program employed 9 specialists and served 703 landowners across more than 2.3 million acres. NRCS invested about $4.4 million, while APHIS provided another $2.7 million. 75 trap systems alone were rotated among more than 150 landowners. The results showed that this approach did more than simply save money on equipment. The number of APHIS assistance agreements increased from 293 in 2020 to 580 in 2023. On participating properties, reported crop damage fell from about 15% to just 4% between 2019 and 2022, with an estimated $10.1 million in losses avoided. Most notably, in Dallam County, the program at one point confirmed that the project area no longer had a resident feral hog population. After deploying a wide range of control measures, Texas has managed to reduce the damage in many areas. In 2025 alone, Texas Wildlife Services helped remove 36,227 feral hogs, preventing an estimated $14.8 million in crop and property damage. In some areas, populations were even pushed down to nearly zero. But statewide, the fight is still far from over. Texas A&M currently estimates that around 3 million feral hogs remain, and 2024 data shows that they are present in 250 of the state's 254 counties, nearly 98% of Texas. Removing one sounder does not mean that property will stay safe forever. Hogs from neighboring ranches can move back in. Surviving animals continue to reproduce, and forests, brushlands, and swamps provide countless places to hide. As soon as control efforts stop, the pressure can quickly return. That is why Texas has shifted toward a more realistic goal. Officials no longer assume that one massive campaign can eliminate every feral hog in the state. Instead, the focus is on reducing population density, protecting crops, and keeping the damage within manageable limits. This problem does not stop at Texas. Across the United States, the USDA still estimates that more than 6 million feral hogs are living in at least 35 states, causing no less than about $3.4 billion in damage every year. Agriculture alone loses roughly $2.5 billion from destroyed crops, torn-up pastures, damaged fences and irrigation systems, and the cost of control efforts. The United States has managed to reclaim some territory. Since the USDA's National Control Program began in 2014, 12 states have eliminated established feral hog populations. But most of those successes came in places where the animals were detected early and removed before their numbers could explode. In the South, the story is completely different. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Florida already have populations that are too large and too widely distributed for any single campaign to wipe them out. Here, the realistic goal is no longer to eliminate the very last hog, but to keep their numbers low enough that crops, livestock, and property are not damaged beyond control. Where feral hogs have not yet become established, the goal is to keep that number at zero. Where they have only recently appeared, they must be eliminated quickly. But in states where millions are already present, people are forced to trap, hunt, monitor, and remove them year after year. But if we look beyond what Texas is doing, the rest of the world has revealed something very important. Dramatically reducing feral hog numbers does not necessarily mean victory. Australia is one of the clearest examples. There, one of the strongest control tools is a strictly regulated bait containing sodium fluoroacetate, or 1080. In some field studies, this method reduced feral hog populations by about 58.8%. Another study in New South Wales recorded a reduction of around 73% while some trials under specific conditions achieved reductions of 73% to 96%. Sounds like a finishing blow? Not exactly. In the study that achieved a 58.8% reduction, control efforts were later stopped, and just 1 year afterward, hog numbers had nearly doubled again. Aerial shooting faces a similar paradox. One campaign can reduce a population by around 80%, but after a year, numbers may recover to roughly 77% of their original level because of reproduction and hogs moving in from surrounding areas. If you are in Texas, this may be the most important lesson of all. Eliminating 7 or 8 out of every 10 hogs is still not enough if the remaining 2 or 3 are left alone for too long. That is why Australia often uses an intense initial knockdown, followed by continued trapping, shooting, and monitoring to prevent the population from rebuilding itself. Japan, meanwhile, is addressing another weakness that even America's smart traps still face. Who decides the exact moment when the gate should close? In Texas, an operator watches the camera, waits until nearly the entire sounder has entered, and then manually triggers the gate. But Japan has tested systems that use sensors to count the hogs inside, determine whether any animals are still standing outside the entrance, and close the trap only when preset conditions have been met. Researchers have even studied the way hogs move through trap entrances, because a suspicious animal often keeps part of its body or its hind legs close to the exit. Instead of forcing the animal to adapt to the trap, they design the trap around the animal's own caution. In one project combining hog exclusion measures with a new sensor-based trapping system, damage in the test area was reported to have fallen by as much as 90%. For the United States, this idea is especially interesting. The next step in smart trapping may not be adding a better camera, but allowing the system itself to recognize the exact moment when the entire sounder has made a mistake. But the most extreme lesson comes from Santiago Island in the Galápagos. Pigs were introduced there by humans and multiplied to the point that they began eating the eggs and young of Galápagos tortoises, sea turtles, petrels, and many other native species. Control efforts began in 1968, but years of scattered hunting only reduced the pressure without solving the root of the problem. Eventually, control teams had to open trails into difficult-to-reach areas, divide the roughly 58,465-hectare island into separate search zones, and combine hunters, dogs, tracking technology, and other control methods. Over roughly 3 decades, more than 18,800 pigs were removed. But this is where the story becomes truly incredible. By April 2000, the last pigs seen by humans appeared to have been eliminated. No more sounders were running through the landscape, no more signs of activity, but the teams did not declare victory. They continued searching the entire island. After more than 2,400 hours of human searching and nearly 1,300 hours of work by dogs, they detected signs of one final individual in October 2000 and removed it. Even then, monitoring continued for several more years before Santiago was officially declared free of pigs. And nature responded almost immediately. An earlier survey had detected only 18 Galápagos rails on Santiago. By the 2004-2005 survey, after the major invasive mammals had been removed, 279 were detected with a comparable level of survey effort. When Australia, Japan, and the Galápagos are placed side by side, the lesson for the United States becomes very clear. Hitting the population hard is only the first step. Technology has to become increasingly intelligent, and if complete eradication is the goal, the hardest part is not removing the first hog, it is finding the last one. Billy Higginbotham once showed that when the right methods are combined, people can reclaim one field at a time. But the fight against feral hogs in Texas is far from over. Success does not come from a single trap or a single helicopter. It comes from large-scale cooperation across entire communities. What do you think? Can humans ever bring feral hogs completely under control, or can we only keep their numbers at an acceptable level? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy real stories about nature, wildlife, and the struggle for survival, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.